My girlfriend said she no longer loved me, but wanted to keep our life under the same roof. So, I became the perfect roommate and stopped doing everything for her until she realized what she lost and begged me to take her back. But I had already found someone better. I'm Jake, 28M, and I've been with my girlfriend Belinda, 26F, for 3 years. We moved in together about 18 months ago after she lost her job at a marketing firm. I work as a software engineer at a tech company downtown, and I make decent money. Belinda has been doing freelance graphic design work since then, but it's pretty inconsistent income. Let me give you some background about our relationship. When we first started dating, Belinda was this incredibly independent woman. She had her own apartment, paid all her bills, and never asked me for anything. That's actually what attracted me to her initially. She seemed like she had her life together, but things changed gradually after she moved in. At first, she was contributing to rent and utilities from her savings. Then her freelance work started drying up around the time COVID hit. I told her not to worry about it and that I could cover everything until she got back on her feet. What I thought would be a temporary arrangement turned into something permanent. I started taking care of everything. I paid the rent, utilities, groceries, car insurance for both our cars, and even her phone bill. I added her to my family plan because it was cheaper than her individual plan. I handled all the household maintenance, fixed things when they broke, did most of the cleaning, and managed our social calendar. When we went out with friends, I picked up the tab. When we went on vacation, I paid for flights, hotels, and meals. Belinda seemed grateful at first. She would thank me and promise things would change once her career picked up. But as months passed, she stopped mentioning it. She started acting like this was just how things worked in our relationship. She would ask me to book dinner reservations for her and her friends. She expected me to drive her places when her car was acting up. She would make plans for us without consulting me, assuming I would handle the logistics and expenses. The physical side of our relationship was good. We were intimate regularly and she seemed happy. She would tell me she loved me. We would cuddle while watching TV and everything appeared normal from the outside. Her friends liked me and my friends liked her. We talked about moving to a bigger place next year and maybe getting a dog. 3 weeks ago, we were sitting on the couch watching some reality show about people renovating houses. I was getting ready for bed because I had an early meeting the next morning. I leaned over to kiss her goodnight like I always do. She pulled back and gave me this strange look. She picked up the remote, muted the TV, and turned to face me directly. She said she needed to tell me something important. She said she liked me as a person and enjoyed living with me, but she wasn't in love with me anymore. She said she hadn't been in love with me for months, maybe longer. She said she wanted to be honest because she respected me too much to keep pretending. I asked her what she wanted to do about our living situation and our relationship. She said she hoped we could continue living together as friends. She said we worked well as roommates and there was no reason to mess up a good thing. She said she valued our friendship and didn't want to lose that by making things complicated. I told her I needed to think about it. I went to the bedroom and lay down. About 20 minutes later, my phone started buzzing with notifications. Belinda was in a group chat with her 3 closest friends, and I had access to it because we sometimes used the shared tablet to text when our phones were dead. I could see she was telling them about our conversation. I watched the messages pop up on the screen. Her friends were telling her how brave and mature she was for being honest. They said it showed how much she cared about me, that she didn't want to hurt me by lying. They said lots of people stay in relationships for convenience, but it takes courage to have the hard conversations. I realized something while reading those messages. Belinda wasn't being brave or honest. She was being practical. She had figured out a way to keep all the benefits of our relationship without any of the obligations that come with being in love with someone. She wanted to keep living in the apartment I pay for. She wanted to keep the financial security I provide. She wanted to keep the emotional support and companionship. She just didn't want to feel guilty about not loving me back anymore. The next morning, I told her I was fine with being roommates. She seemed relieved and hugged me. She said she was so glad I understood and that this would be better for both of us in the long run. That's when I decided to become the perfect roommate, not boyfriend-roommate. I stopped making coffee for her in the morning. I had always made a full pot and left her mug on the counter next to it. Now I make exactly 1 cup in my travel mug and take it to work with me. I stopped doing her laundry. I had always thrown her clothes in with mine when I was doing a load. Now I only wash my own stuff. I stopped buying her favorite foods when I went grocery shopping. I had always picked up the specific brand of yogurt she likes and the expensive granola she eats for breakfast. Now I buy exactly what I need for myself and nothing extra. When she asked me to book a dinner reservation for her and her girlfriends last week, I told her I was busy that evening. I suggested she call the restaurant directly since they usually have availability if you call ahead. When her car started making that grinding noise again, she mentioned it to me while I was working on my laptop. I told her that sounded frustrating and suggested she get a few quotes from mechanics in the area. I said Yelp usually has good reviews for local auto shops. She keeps looking at me like she's waiting for me to do something. She leaves dishes in the sink longer than usual, probably expecting me to wash them like I used to. I just wash my own dishes and leave hers where they are. She's been playing sad music in the living room and sighing loudly when I'm nearby. Yesterday she asked if I wanted to watch a movie with her, and I said I was planning to go to the gym. I can see her getting more frustrated every day, but I don't understand why. I'm giving her exactly what she asked for. We're roommates now. I treat her the same way I would treat any roommate, with basic politeness and respect, but without the extras that come from being in love with someone. Her phone got shut off yesterday because I removed my card from her family plan. She came to me in a panic asking what happened. I explained that since we're not really a family anymore, it made sense for her to have her own phone plan. I offered to help her set up service with Verizon or T-Mobile. I'm not trying to be mean or get revenge. I'm just being logical. She made it clear that our romantic relationship is over, so I'm adjusting my behavior to match that reality. I don't do extra things for roommates that I would only do for someone I'm in love with. The lease on our apartment is up in 2 months and I'm not planning to renew it. I've been looking at one-bedroom places closer to my office. Belinda doesn't know yet because she hasn't asked, and roommates don't typically discuss their long-term housing plans unless it directly affects the other person. Am I handling this wrong? Should I be doing more to try to work things out? I feel like I'm being reasonable, but maybe I'm missing something. Update 1. Thank you to everyone who commented on my original post. A lot of people asked for an update, so here it is. Things have gotten more interesting since I last wrote. Belinda's frustration has turned into something closer to panic, and I think she's starting to understand the full implications of what she asked for. Let me start with what happened on her birthday last week. Belinda turned 27 on Tuesday. In the past, I would plan something special for her birthday. 2 years ago, I surprised her with a weekend trip to Napa Valley. Last year, I organized a dinner party with all her friends at that expensive Italian place she loves. I would typically spend weeks planning, make reservations, coordinate with her friends, and handle all the details. This year, I wished her happy birthday in the morning and asked if she had any fun plans for the day. She looked at me like I was speaking a foreign language. She said she thought we might do something together to celebrate. I told her that sounded nice and asked what she had in mind. She said she hadn't made any specific plans because she assumed I would handle it like I always did. I reminded her that planning birthday celebrations is typically something boyfriends do for their girlfriends or something people do for themselves. Since we're roommates now, I figured she would want to celebrate with her actual friends rather than her roommate. She stared at me for a long moment, then said she would figure something out. She spent most of the day texting people, trying to organize something last minute. Most of her friends were busy because it was a Tuesday night and she hadn't given them advanced notice. She ended up ordering Chinese food and eating it alone while watching Netflix. I was in the office working on a project that was due the next morning. The financial reality has been hitting her harder than I expected. Besides the phone bill situation I mentioned before, there have been several other wake-up calls. Her car registration was due last month. I had always handled that for both of us because I'm organized about paperwork and deadlines. She didn't realize it was her responsibility now until she got pulled over for expired tags. The ticket was $250, plus she had to pay late fees for the registration renewal. Our car insurance was up for renewal, and I removed her from my policy. She had to get her own insurance, which cost significantly more than the family discount rate she was getting on my plan. She called me at work asking why her insurance card wasn't working when she tried to show it to the police officer during the traffic stop. She's been asking me to drive her places because her car is still making noise and she's nervous about driving it. Last Saturday, she asked me to take her to Target because she needed to pick up some things and didn't trust her car for the drive. I told her I had plans to go hiking with my friend Mike, but I could drop her off at Target on my way if she wanted. She asked how she was supposed to get home, and I suggested she could call an Uber or take the bus. The bus stop is right outside Target, and our apartment is on the direct route. She ended up taking the bus home, which took over an hour because she had to wait for the next bus and then make 2 transfers. She was carrying heavy bags and looked exhausted when she got back. I think she's starting to realize how much I was handling behind the scenes. I used to take care of all the little things that make life easier. Now she has to figure out everything herself, and she's discovering that being an adult requires a lot more planning and money than she remembered. Her freelance work has picked up a little bit, but not enough to cover all her new expenses. She got a small project designing a logo for a local restaurant which paid $800. But between her new phone bill, car insurance, the traffic ticket, and having to buy her own groceries, that money disappeared quickly. She's been eating a lot of pasta and canned soup lately because those are some of the cheapest things she can find. I continue to buy my normal groceries including fresh vegetables, good meat, and the organic stuff I like. I keep it all on my designated shelves in the refrigerator and pantry. Last weekend, she asked if she could borrow some of my food because she was running low on groceries and wouldn't get paid for her latest project until the following week. I told her she was welcome to anything in the shared sections like salt, pepper, and basic condiments, but the rest was my personal food. She asked if I could spot her some money for groceries, and she would pay me back when her client paid her. I explained that lending money to roommates can make things awkward, especially when there's no clear timeline for repayment. I suggested she could ask her friends or family for help, or maybe pick up some extra freelance work. The social dynamics have been interesting too. Belinda's friends have stopped coming over as much as they used to. I think they feel awkward around me now that they know we're not actually dating anymore. When they do come over, they whisper a lot and keep looking at me like they're trying to figure out what I'm thinking. Two of her friends, Patty and Amanda, came over last Thursday night. They were clearly there to give Belinda emotional support and probably to talk about me. I said hello when they arrived, then went to my office to work. I could hear them talking quietly in the living room for about 2 hours. When they were leaving, Patty stopped by my office door and asked if she could talk to me for a minute. She said Belinda was going through a hard time and asked if there was any way we could work things out. She said Belinda really cares about me and maybe just got scared about the commitment. I told Patty I appreciated her concern, but Belinda had been very clear about not being in love with me anymore. I said I was respecting Belinda's honesty and trying to be a good friend by not putting pressure on her to change her feelings. Patty looked frustrated and said that wasn't what she meant. She said, "Sometimes people say things they don't really mean when they're stressed or confused." I asked Patty if she thought Belinda was lying when she said she wasn't in love with me. Patty didn't have a good answer for that. The conversation with Patty made me realize that Belinda's friends are trying to fix something that Belinda herself said was broken. They're treating this like a temporary relationship problem instead of the permanent change in status that Belinda requested. I've been going out more in the evenings. I joined a hiking group that meets on weekends and I've been going to the gym consistently. I signed up for a cooking class on Thursday nights, which is something I always wanted to try, but never had time for when I was busy managing our relationship. Belinda has been home alone most evenings now. She used to have plans with friends several nights a week, but that seems to have dropped off. I'm not sure if it's because she can't afford to go out as much or if her friends are less available now that she doesn't have a boyfriend to help coordinate group activities. I found an apartment I really like. It's a one-bedroom place about 15 minutes closer to my office with a great kitchen and a small balcony. The rent is actually less than what I'm paying now because I won't be splitting a two-bedroom. I haven't signed anything yet because I want to give Belinda enough notice to figure out her own housing situation. She still hasn't asked me about the lease renewal even though it's coming up in 6 weeks. I wonder if she's assuming I'll just handle it like I used to handle everything else. Update 2. The situation has escalated significantly since my last update. Belinda is starting to understand that this isn't a phase I'm going through and her attempts to fix things have become more desperate. 3 weeks ago she tried a different approach. She came home from having drinks with her friends and was wearing one of my old college t-shirts that she used to sleep in when we were dating. She sat on the edge of the bed while I was reading and started crying. She said she missed me and missed what we used to have together. She said she made a mistake and wanted to go back to how things were before. I put my book down and asked her what specifically she missed. She said she missed feeling close to someone and having someone who cared about her. I told her it sounded like she was going through a difficult time and suggested she might benefit from talking to a counselor. I said there are sliding scale therapy options if cost was a concern, or she could try some of the mental health apps that offer affordable counseling. She stared at me like I had slapped her. She asked if I was seriously recommending therapy instead of talking about our relationship. I said I wasn't qualified to help her work through her feelings about missing intimacy and emotional connection. A professional would be much better equipped to help her figure out what she really wanted. She got up and left the room without saying anything else. The next morning she acted like the conversation never happened, but I could tell she was studying my behavior more carefully, like she was trying to find cracks in my roommate approach. The lease situation finally came to a head last week. Our landlord sent the renewal notice and I left it on the kitchen counter for Belinda to see. She found it when she got home from a freelance meeting. She asked me if we were going to renew the lease. I told her I had decided not to renew and that I had already signed a lease on a different place starting next month. She asked where that left her. I said she would need to decide whether she wanted to take over this lease by herself or find somewhere else to live. I offered to ask our landlord if he would be willing to remove my name from the lease if she wanted to stay. That's when she completely lost it. She started yelling that I was abandoning her and leaving her with no way to afford the rent on her own. She said I was being cruel and punishing her for being honest about her feelings. I stayed calm and reminded her that roommates don't typically sign long-term leases together unless they've specifically discussed it and agreed on terms. I said I had assumed she would want the freedom to make her own housing decisions as an independent adult. She said I knew she couldn't afford this place on her own and that I was deliberately putting her in an impossible situation. I pointed out that she had never asked me about my plans for the lease renewal even though she had 6 weeks to bring it up. I said if she had asked, we could have had this conversation much earlier and she would have had more time to explore her options. She demanded to know why I was doing this to her. She said I was being vindictive and trying to hurt her because she didn't love me the way I wanted her to. I told her I wasn't trying to hurt anyone. I said she had made it clear that she wanted to be friends instead of romantic partners, and I was trying to respect that by not making assumptions about our future living arrangements. She asked what she was supposed to do now. I suggested she could look for roommates or maybe move back in with her parents temporarily while she figured things out. I said her friend Patty had mentioned that she was looking for someone to split rent on a 2-bedroom apartment. She said moving back in with her parents would be humiliating and that Patty's apartment was in a bad neighborhood she didn't want to live in. I said those were definitely challenging options, but that I was confident she would figure something out. I reminded her that she had been living independently before we moved in together, so she had experience managing her own housing. She said that was different because she had a steady job then and that I knew her financial situation was more complicated now. I agreed that her financial situation was more challenging, but said that was exactly why it made sense for her to have more control over her living expenses instead of depending on someone else to make those decisions for her. The conversation ended with her storming out of the apartment. She came back several hours later and didn't speak to me for 3 days. During those 3 days, I could hear her on the phone constantly, presumably trying to figure out her living situation. She had several long conversations with her parents, which sounded tense based on the tone of her voice coming from her bedroom. She also had what sounded like a difficult conversation with Patty about the roommate situation. I gathered from the parts one overheard that Patty's timeline didn't match up with Belinda's needs. On Thursday she asked if we could talk. She had clearly been crying and she looked exhausted. She said she had been thinking about everything and she realized she might have been taking me for granted. She said she wanted to work on rebuilding our relationship and earning back my trust. I asked her what she meant by rebuilding our relationship. She said she wanted us to be a couple again. She said she had been confused before, but now she understood what she really wanted. I asked her what had changed since our conversation 6 weeks ago when she told me she wasn't in love with me. She said she had been scared of commitment and had convinced herself she didn't have strong feelings for me. She said living as friends had made her realize how much she actually cared about me. I said that was interesting and asked when exactly she had realized she was in love with me again. She said it had been building over the past few weeks, but it became clear when she thought about me moving out. I said the timing seemed convenient given that she had just discovered she couldn't afford to live in our current apartment without me. She got defensive and said money had nothing to do with it. She said she genuinely missed being close to me and wanted to give our relationship another try. I told her I appreciated her honesty, but I wasn't interested in dating her again. She asked why not, and I explained that she had already told me she wasn't in love with me. I said I believed her when she said that, and I didn't think people's feelings changed that dramatically in just 6 weeks. She insisted her feelings were real and asked what she could do to prove it to me. I said there was nothing she could do because I was no longer in love with her either. That wasn't entirely true when I said it, but it became true while I was saying it. Something shifted in that moment and I realized I really was done. She started crying again and said I was giving up on us too easily. She said relationships require work and compromise and that I wasn't even willing to try. I said she was right that relationships require work, but they also require both people to actually want to be in the relationship. I said I no longer wanted to be in a romantic relationship with her. She's been staying at her friend Amanda's place for the past few days, presumably to give me space to change my mind, but I'm not going to change my mind. I move out next Friday. I've already started packing and I hired movers to handle the furniture. Belinda can keep anything she wants that we bought together. I just want to take my personal belongings and start fresh. Update 3. I moved out 2 weeks ago and wanted to give everyone a final update on how things ended. Belinda came back to the apartment the day before I was scheduled to move. She had been staying with Amanda for almost a week, and I think she expected to come home to find me still there, surrounded by unpacked boxes, maybe having second thoughts about leaving. Instead, she found most of my stuff already in boxes and the movers scheduled to arrive the next morning. She asked if I was really going through with it. I said yes. I was moving out as planned. She said she had been talking to Amanda and Patty about everything and they thought we should try couples counseling before making any permanent decisions. I told her I wasn't interested in couples counseling because I didn't consider us a couple anymore. She said she understood I was hurt but that walking away wasn't the solution. She said we had built something good together and it was worth fighting for. I asked her what specifically we had built together that was worth fighting for. She mentioned our shared friend group, our comfortable routine, and how well we worked as a team when we weren't dealing with relationship drama. I pointed out that those things described a good roommate situation, not a romantic relationship. She got frustrated and said I was being deliberately difficult. She said she knew I still had feelings for her and that I was just being stubborn. I asked her what made her think I still had feelings for her. She said she could tell by the way I looked at her sometimes and that nobody changes their behavior as dramatically as I have, unless they were trying to protect themselves from getting hurt. I said that was an interesting theory but that she was wrong. I said the reason my behavior had changed was because my feelings had changed. She asked when exactly I had stopped loving her. I thought about it for a moment, then told her it was probably the night I realized she had told her friends about our conversation before she had even finished having it with me. I said that was when I understood she wasn't actually interested in having an honest conversation with me. She was just looking for validation from her friends about a decision she had already made. She said that wasn't fair and that she had just needed support from her friends during a difficult conversation. I said I understood why she needed support, but the timing showed me that she wasn't really considering my perspective or leaving room for us to work through things together. She had already decided how the conversation was going to go. She started crying and said she never meant for things to end this way. I said I believed her, but that intentions didn't really matter as much as actions. The movers arrived the next morning at 8. Belinda stayed in her bedroom while they loaded my furniture in boxes. I had already moved most of my clothes and personal items to the new apartment over the previous few days, so the actual move was pretty quick. Before I left, I knocked on her bedroom door to say goodbye. She didn't answer but I could hear her crying inside. I left my key on the kitchen counter next to a note with my new address in case she needed to forward any mail or had questions about the security deposit. My new apartment is great. It's smaller than the place I shared with Belinda, but everything in it belongs to me and reflects my actual preferences instead of compromises we made as a couple. I have a reading chair by the window where I drink my morning coffee. I bought plants for the balcony. I set up my office exactly how I wanted. I've been dating someone new for about 3 weeks. Her name is Rebecca and she's a nurse at the hospital downtown. We met at the hiking group I joined a few months ago. She has her own apartment, pays her own bills, and has never asked me to fix anything for her or handle her errands. When Rebecca cooks dinner for us, she also cleans up afterward. When we go out, she pays for her own meal unless we specifically agree beforehand that one of us is treating the other. When she says she loves spending time with me, she demonstrates it by planning activities we can do together instead of expecting me to plan everything. It's been a good reminder of what a balanced relationship actually looks like. Belinda texted me last week asking if we could meet for coffee to talk. She said she wanted closure and to apologize for how things ended. I didn't respond to the text. We already had closure the day I moved out. She doesn't need my permission to apologize, and I don't need to hear her apology to move on with my life. From what I understand, through mutual friends, she ended up moving back in with her parents. She's still doing freelance graphic design work, but she's also looking for a full-time job with benefits and a steady salary. Patty mentioned that Belinda has been asking about me and wondering if I'm happy in my new place. Patty asked if I would be open to talking to Belinda if she reached out. I told Patty that Belinda was welcome to reach out if she had something specific she needed to discuss, but that I wasn't interested in rekindling our friendship or having conversations about our past relationship. Patty said Belinda was having a hard time adjusting to living with her parents again, and that she felt like she had lost her best friend along with her boyfriend. I said that was unfortunate, but that it was a natural consequence of the choices Belinda made. I said I hoped she would figure things out and find happiness, but that I wasn't the right person to help her with that process. Some people might think I handled this situation too harshly, but I think Belinda needed to learn that relationships have real consequences and that you can't expect people to wait around indefinitely while you figure out what you want. She told me she wasn't in love with me, so I stopped acting like someone who was in love with her. She wanted the benefits of having a devoted boyfriend without the obligation of being a devoted girlfriend. When I stopped providing those benefits, she realized what she was giving up. But by then I had realized what I was giving up too. I was giving up my time, energy, and money to someone who didn't appreciate any of it enough to love me back. I was settling for a relationship where I cared more than she did, and where I was responsible for making everything work while she just enjoyed the results. I'm not angry with Belinda anymore. I think she's a decent person who made some selfish choices without fully thinking through the implications. But I also don't miss her or wish things had worked out differently. I'm much happier now with someone who actually wants to be with me rather than someone who just likes the lifestyle I can provide. Story 2. My stepbrother stole my girlfriend. Years later, they begged me to save her from prison after she stole $75,000. I, 25M, never imagined that I would end up sharing my story on Reddit. But the events of recent years left me no other choice. It all started when my mother married Robert, 52M, 5 years ago. I was 20 years old at the time and was working at a promising tech startup that developed mobile applications. I had a girlfriend, Sarah, 19 years old, whom I met during my first year of college. She was studying psychology and we connected instantly over our shared love of indie music and horror movies. Life seemed perfect. I was earning well, had a loving girlfriend, and was slowly saving up to move out of the house. My mother met Robert at a charity event where she was volunteering. He presented himself as a perfect gentleman. A successful real estate developer, eloquent and seemingly genuinely interested in making our family work. They dated for a year before getting married in a small ceremony. I was happy for my mother, who had raised me alone since I was 12 years old. She deserved someone who could provide her with a good life. Robert had a son from a previous marriage, James, 22M at the time. From day one there was tension between us. James had dropped out of college and was living with his parents, supposedly working on various business ideas that never materialized. He constantly tried to one-up me in everything. If I helped my mother with groceries, he would spend the entire day reorganizing the pantry. If I talked about my work, he would interrupt me with grandiose plans about his future business empire. I usually ignored his behavior and focused on my relationship with Sarah. We had been together for 2 years and things were getting serious. We spent most weekends together, studying in cafes or binge-watching series at my place. We had even started looking at apartments online, planning to live together as soon as we had saved enough. Sarah got along well with my mother and I thought she was the person I would spend the rest of my life with. Everything changed after our family barbecue in the summer. Robert insisted on having regular family gatherings to strengthen bonds, and this was our third. James met Sarah there for the first time. I noticed he was staring at her throughout the night, especially when she was helping my mother in the kitchen. Sarah was wearing a blue summer dress that day. I remember because she had just bought it for her cousin's wedding. James kept finding reasons to be wherever she was, offering to help with the dishes, asking about her studies, laughing too much at her jokes. After that day, living with James became unbearable. Whenever Sarah visited, he would come out of his room and plant himself in the living room. He started texting her about random things, asking for book recommendations since she was in psychology, seeking advice about his non-existent girlfriend's problems, or sharing memes. At first, Sarah showed me these messages, saying James was just being friendly and needed someone to talk to. The warning signs were there, but I trusted too much. James started working out at the same gym Sarah frequented. He started dressing differently, buying clothes similar to my style. He even cut his hair like mine. Looking back, he was trying to become my replacement right under my nose. On a Tuesday, I came home early because a client meeting was canceled. I found Sarah and James in our living room, sitting closer than friends should, with their heads bent over his phone. They separated abruptly when they saw me. Sarah claimed she was helping James with his dating profile. I confronted her later that night. She turned it against me, saying I was being possessive and that James was like a brother to her. I wanted to believe her because the alternative was too painful to even consider. Around this time, I was saving money to buy an engagement ring. I had been putting aside money from each paycheck for months, planning to propose on our 3rd anniversary. I kept track of my savings through a budgeting app, watching the numbers grow each month. Then one day I noticed something strange. There were withdrawals I hadn't made. At first I thought it was a bank error. But when I checked the transaction history, I found multiple withdrawals over the past 2 months, always on days when I was working and James was home alone. The total amount missing was $15,000, all my savings for the ring in our future apartment. I was devastated. When I confronted James, he didn't even try to deny it at first. He just gave a sarcastic smile and asked me to prove it was him. Then, before I could gather any evidence, he went to his father with an absurd claim that I had stolen $10,000 from him. James made up an elaborate story about how he had been saving money from side gigs and online trading to start his own business. He claimed he kept the money in his room because he didn't trust banks. Robert, who always favored his son, believed him immediately. The situation worsened when James presented bank statements showing transfers from his account to mine. They looked real enough to convince Robert and, to my amazement, even my mother. The final blow came when Sarah broke up with me via text message. She wrote that she couldn't believe I would steal from my own family, that she had seen signs of my greed before but had ignored them. A week later, I was walking to the parking lot after work when I saw them at the cafe across the street. Sarah was wearing the promise ring I had given her on our second anniversary, but she was holding James's hand, laughing at something he was saying. They kissed and my whole world shattered. Everything made sense. The text messages, the gym, the friendly conversations. They had been seeing each other behind my back for months. That night, Robert confronted me in front of everyone. He demanded I return James's money or he would call the police. I tried to show him my bank statements, proving that money had first been stolen from me, but he wouldn't listen. My own mother, who raised me to be honest, now looked at me with doubt in her eyes. Robert gave me 24 hours to return the money or leave. I packed my things that night while my mother cried in her room. My college friend Marcus let me stay on his couch until I could get organized. The following months were difficult. I worked overtime at my regular job and took on freelance projects in my spare time. I cut off all contact with my family and blocked Sarah on everything. The betrayal was too deep to even consider maintaining any relationship. Now looking back, losing everything became the motivation I needed. I channeled all my anger and pain into work. Within a year, I had saved enough to open my own software development company. We specialize in security applications. Ironic, considering how my trust was betrayed. The company grew beyond my expectations and we now have clients across the country. First update. It's been 3 weeks since my original post went viral, and I need to share some shocking revelations that have come to light. A guy named Mike reached out to me on Reddit after seeing my post. Turns out he was a close friend of James at the time all this happened. And what he told me made me realize the betrayal was even worse than I imagined. Mike and I met at a coffee shop last weekend. He seemed nervous and kept checking his phone, saying he was worried James would find out about our meeting. According to Mike, James had been planning to steal both my girlfriend and my money for months before he actually did it. It wasn't an impulsive decision or a case of falling in love with Sarah. It was a meticulously crafted plan to destroy my life. Mike showed me text messages from their group chat, some dating back several months before the theft. James was bragging about how he was going to take everything from me, saying things like, "I don't deserve what I had." He was jealous of my job, my savings, and especially my relationship with Sarah. There were messages where he outlined a strategy to get close to her, describing how he would play the role of an attentive friend while gradually poisoning her mind against me. The manipulation was all very elaborate. James created a whole narrative about me that he told Sarah. He told her I was talking badly about her to my coworkers, claiming he heard me mocking her career choices and saying she wasn't smart enough for me. He made up stories about me having a gambling problem and showed Sarah fake betting tickets he had created. He even went so far as to invent stories about me pressuring other girls at work to go out with them. But it gets worse. The bank statements James used to incriminate me, Mike admitted to helping create them using Photoshop. At the time, he worked at a print shop and had access to high-quality scanning and printing equipment. They spent hours making sure the documents looked authentic, even using paper from the same bank. Mike says he feels guilty about his role in everything and offered to tell the truth to my family, but I told him not to bother anymore. I've moved on and built a better life for myself. Mike also revealed something that made my blood boil. James had been secretly recording our conversations for months. He would start arguments with me for no apparent reason when there was someone else around, deliberately provoking me, and then edited the recordings to make it look like I was admitting to stealing from him. He had dozens of these manipulated audio clips ready to use in case I tried to defend myself. The most painful revelation was about Sarah's role in all of this. She wasn't just an innocent victim of James's manipulation. She was an active participant. Mike showed me screenshots of conversations between James and Sarah, where they discussed their plans in detail. It was Sarah who suggested making me look financially irresponsible to my family. She knew about the fake bank statements and even helped create the narrative about my supposed gambling problem. The betrayal went even deeper. Sarah had given James access to my phone several times when I wasn't around. She knew my password because I trusted her completely. They used this access to get into my banking apps and collect information about my accounts. Sarah also installed some kind of tracking app on my phone so they would know when I was coming home early from work. The money they stole from me, all my savings for our future, went directly to funding their secret relationship. While I was working overtime and taking on extra projects to save for an engagement ring, they were using my money for weekend trips to luxury resorts. Mike showed me their Instagram stories from those days that they had hidden from me using Instagram's close friends feature. There were photos of them at expensive restaurants, staying at luxury hotels, Sarah wearing new designer clothes that I assumed were gifts from her parents. What makes me sick is remembering how Sarah talked about saving money and being careful with expenses when she was with me. She would suggest we eat at home instead of going out, saying we needed to save for the future, while she was spending my money with James behind my back. The final twist came yesterday when my mother left another voicemail. She was crying. She said she misses me and wants to fix things. She mentioned that Robert has been distant lately and she's starting to notice cracks in his perfect facade. Part of me wants to send her all the evidence Mike provided, show her how completely her stepson deceived everyone. But another part of me wants to leave all this in the past. I've worked hard to rebuild my life and dragging up all this pain again might not be worth it. Mike offered to help me expose everything, but I declined. I told him I appreciate him being honest, but I don't want to get involved in their lives again. The betrayal is too deep and no amount of exposure or revenge would undo the pain they caused. Besides, I'm focused on expanding my company now, and success is the best revenge. Update 2. 3 months have passed since my last update, and the situation has taken several unexpected turns. I found out through a mutual friend, Ashley, that James and Sarah had a rushed wedding ceremony last month. Ashley attended the wedding and told me it was quite different from the luxurious celebration Sarah used to dream about when we were together. Instead of the beach resort wedding she always dreamed of, it was a quick ceremony at the local courthouse followed by a reception at a budget hotel. Ashley said everything felt desperate rather than romantic. James spent most of the reception circulating among tables, trying to network with the wealthier guests. He was pitching his latest business idea involving cryptocurrency trading and practically begging for investors. Meanwhile, Sarah was showing off an expensive engagement ring, which Ashley later found out had been bought entirely on credit. According to Ashley, their financial situation is desperate. James lost his job at his father's company 3 months ago after several costly mistakes with client accounts. Robert finally realized his son wasn't as competent as he pretended to be. Sarah's shopping addiction, which I had no idea about during our relationship, apparently spiraled completely out of control. She maxed out several credit cards buying designer clothes and luxury items, frequently returning them to get store credit to buy more things. Last week, completely out of the blue, James showed up at my office. My receptionist tried to send him away, but he made such a scene that I ended up agreeing to see him for 5 minutes. I barely recognized him. His expensive clothes were wrinkled, his hair was dirty, and he had dark circles under his eyes. He looked nothing like the arrogant, polished guy who had stolen my life 5 years ago. James broke down in tears as soon as he sat down. Between sobs, he confirmed that everything Mike had told me was true. He admitted to planning the whole thing with Sarah, stealing my money, and deliberately destroying my relationship with my family. But that wasn't why he came to see me. The real reason for the visit was even more shocking. Apparently, Sarah had developed a serious gambling addiction that started shortly after their wedding. She began slowly playing poker on her phone, but it quickly escalated to online casinos and sports betting. To support her addiction, she started stealing money from the accounting firm where she works. She was manipulating the books, diverting client payments to her personal accounts. Their situation reached its breaking point last week when her employer discovered the theft. The amount stolen is substantial, over $50,000. Her company gave an ultimatum: either she pays the full amount within a month or they file criminal charges. Additionally, Sarah is 3 months pregnant. James spent an hour in my office crying and begging for help. He offered to sign a legal document admitting he stole from me years ago and promising to tell our parents the whole truth about what happened. He even pulled out his phone to show me the accumulated bills and final warnings from credit card companies. The amount needed to keep Sarah from criminal charges is exactly double what they stole from me back then. James tried to frame this as some kind of cosmic justice. If I helped them now, they would pay me back double what they took from me. He even suggested I could keep them in debt to me for years. I sat there listening to him, remembering all the nights I spent on Marcus's couch, working multiple jobs to rebuild my life after they destroyed it. I thought about my mother's tears when I left home, worried about the years of family relationships ruined by their lies. James looked at me with desperate eyes, probably expecting the same understanding and forgiveness I showed when we were stepbrothers. Sarah called me later that night from an unknown number. She was hysterical, begging me to at least consider helping them. She mentioned the baby, said she couldn't bear the thought of giving birth in prison. She claimed she had changed, that she regretted everything she had done to me, and that she thinks about me every day. The same lies she told when we were together, only now with much bigger consequences. I've spent the last week thinking about what to do. The evidence of the embezzlement from the company is in my email, sent by James in his desperation to prove the severity of the situation. Part of me wants to forward everything to Sarah's employer, while another part just wants to continue ignoring their existence, as I have been doing for the past 5 years. Update 3. It's been 4 months since James came begging to my office, and I wanted to share what happened. After careful consideration, I decided not to give them the money. Instead, I forwarded all the evidence James had sent me along with the details Mike had provided to Sarah's employer about the previous theft. Some might call this revenge, but I saw it as justice. They needed to face the consequences of their actions at least once. Sarah's company proceeded with charges, but the information I provided helped build a stronger case. She was arrested 2 weeks later. During the investigation, they discovered she had actually stolen about $75,000, not the $50,000 she claimed. She now faces serious charges of embezzlement and fraud. James finally told the truth to our parents, but only after everything fell apart. He confessed to stealing my money, creating false evidence, and deliberately destroying my relationship with the family. But his confession wasn't out of guilt. He only confessed because he needed a place to stay after they were evicted from their apartment. Robert sent me a text message apologizing, which read more like a legal disclaimer than genuine remorse. I apologize for believing James instead of you. It was a mistake on my part. My mother has been calling and texting constantly, begging me to consider some kind of family reconciliation. She keeps saying that Sarah and James have suffered enough, so with the baby coming, we should try to be a family again. She even suggested that helping Sarah avoid prison would be the noblest thing to do, especially now that I'm financially successful. I blocked her number after that last message. Sarah's parents cut ties with her completely. They refused to help with her legal costs after finding out about the embezzlement. According to Ashley, they had already suspected what happened surrounding our breakup years ago, and this confirmed their worst fears about their daughter. James and Sarah had to move back in with Robert. James now works at a fast food restaurant, trying to save money for Sarah's legal defense. Sarah is under house arrest while awaiting her court date, wearing an electronic ankle monitor and prohibited from accessing any device with internet access due to her gambling addiction. My mother showed up at my office last week crying, saying Sarah is having difficulties with her pregnancy while under house arrest. She tried to make me feel guilty by saying my future niece or nephew shouldn't be born with their mother in prison. I had security escort her out. Robert tried to contact me through my company's corporate email, suggesting we could resolve the situation privately if I withdrew my statement to Sarah's employer. I had my lawyer send him a cease and desist notice. Some of my relatives have been posting on social media about how I'm being cruel and relentless, but they don't know the whole story. As for me, my company has expanded to 3 new cities in the last year. I recently got engaged to Emma, whom I met at a tech conference 2 years ago. She knows my whole story and understands why I keep my distance from my family. We're planning a wedding next spring, and no, my family won't receive invitations. Some people might think I'm being insensitive by not helping them, especially with a baby involved, but I believe they're finally facing the consequences of their own choices. Their current situation is not my responsibility, and pregnancy is not a free pass for fraud. I've blocked everyone except my mother, though I rarely respond to her messages. She still sends emotional messages about family forgiveness and second chances, but I've learned that sometimes the best response is no response. The company is thriving. I'm happily engaged, and I've discovered that success really is the best revenge.